Welcome to the true story of the FBI agent who sold America's deepest secrets from the inside for 22 years without anyone noticing.
Ghost in the Bureau. The Robert Hanssen story. February 18, 2001. Foxstone Park, Vienna, Virginia. A quiet suburb just outside Washington, D.C. Families walk dogs here. Children ride bikes. Nothing ever happens in Foxstone Park. Except today. An FBI surveillance team watches from the trees. Their target is a 56-year-old man in a dark coat who has come to this bridge hundreds of times before. He kneels, places a package of classified documents beneath a wooden post, just as he has done for the past 22 years. The man stands, sees them, looks at his hands. What took you so long? His name was Robert Philip Hanssen. He was a senior agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He was also the most damaging spy in American history. To understand Robert Hanssen, you have to go back to a cold apartment on the north side of Chicago, sometime in the 1950s. A boy sits at a kitchen table, doing his homework under a bare bulb. His father, a Chicago police officer, walks in and tells him he will never amount to anything. Robert Hanssen heard those words over and over growing up. His father, Howard Hanssen, was a domineering and contemptuous man who seemed to take pleasure in belittling his only son. By the accounts of those who knew him in childhood, Robert was quiet, intelligent, and deeply wounded. He learned early that the world was divided into those who had power and those who did not. He decided very quietly that he would have it. He studied chemistry at Knox College in Illinois, then shifted to dentistry, then accounting, then medicine. A restless, searching intelligence looking for a vessel. He eventually settled on law enforcement, following his father on to the Chicago Police Department, perhaps to prove something. Then in 1976, he joined the FBI. On the surface, everything about Hanssen said dedicated federal agent. He was meticulous, deeply religious, a devout Catholic who attended daily mass and was a member of Opus Dei, a conservative Catholic organization that preaches discipline and sacrifice. He dressed in black. He was formal, often stiff with colleagues. He was brilliant with computers at a time when almost no one in law enforcement was. He was also deeply unhappy. He felt overlooked by the Bureau, passed over for promotions he believed he deserved, surrounded by colleagues he considered his intellectual inferiors. The FBI, he would later tell a psychiatrist, was run by people who couldn't spell cat. This is the combustible chemistry that would define Robert Hanssen's life. A man of formidable intelligence, consuming resentment, and a desperate need to matter. The question was what he would do with it. Part 2, The First Betrayal. In 1979, Hanssen was a 35-year-old FBI agent working in counterintelligence in New York City. He had a wife, Bonnie, 3 children, a mortgage, and a plan. He walked into the offices of the Soviet Military Intelligence Agency, the GRU, in Manhattan. Not because he was sent there, not because he was recruited. He just showed up and offered to spy for the Soviet Union. He did not give them his name. He called himself B. He would remain anonymous to his handlers for the next 22 years. What he gave them in that first package was extraordinary. The names of 3 Soviet officers who were secretly working for the United States. 3 men whose lives were now forfeit. 2 of them were executed. A third managed to escape. For this, the GRU paid him $20,000 in cash. And then, remarkably, Hanssen stopped. He walked away from their relationship in 1981. Why? His wife, Bonnie, had discovered him writing a letter to his handler. He confessed to her. She made him go to a priest. The priest told him to donate the money to charity, which he did to Mother Teresa's mission. And that was that. For 6 years, Robert Hanssen was just an FBI agent again. He moved to Washington. He was assigned to the Soviet Analytical Unit, the very team tasked with hunting Soviet spies inside American intelligence. He was, by all accounts, good at it. He knew exactly how the FBI found moles. He knew the patterns, the signatures, the mistakes that got people caught. He was learning the shape of the trap from the inside. Part 3, The Second Act. 1985, the year that American intelligence would later call the Year of the Spy. Aldrich Ames, a CIA officer, began selling secrets to the Soviets. Jonathan Pollard, a Navy analyst, was selling intelligence to Israel. And Robert Hanssen, after 6 years of silence, came back. This time he wrote directly to the KGB, the Soviet Union's premier intelligence agency, far more powerful than the GRU he had originally approached. His opening letter was audacious. He included the name of a KGB officer who had been recruited by the FBI. He offered to provide a continuous stream of America's most sensitive national security secrets, and he named his price, $100,000 in cash. He signed the letter Ramon Garcia. He would never give them his real name, not once, in 22 years, not a single photograph, not a fingerprint, not a meeting in person. What followed was one of the longest and most devastating espionage operations in American history. Hanssen provided the KGB with the locations of secret American nuclear bunkers, the places where the government would retreat in the event of a nuclear war. He handed over technical details about America's nuclear weapon systems. He revealed the existence of a highly classified eavesdropping tunnel the US and UK had secretly dug beneath the Soviet embassy in Washington, a tunnel that had cost hundreds of millions of dollars and years of work. He betrayed the identities of virtually every Soviet officer the FBI and CIA had secretly recruited as sources. Scholars now believe at least 3 of them were executed as a direct result of Hanssen's information. His tradecraft was extraordinary. He communicated exclusively through dead drops, leaving packages in prearranged locations, often state parks in Virginia. He used thumbtacks as signals. He never used the phone, never used a traceable payment method. He demanded cash and later diamonds. Early morning fog, a package beneath a bridge, nobody around. Inside those packages, thousands of pages of classified documents, floppy disks loaded with intelligence files, the contents of America's most secret programs. In total, Hanssen passed more than 6,000 pages of classified material to Soviet and then Russian intelligence over 2 decades. Part 4. The perfect cover. How did he survive so long without detection? Partly through extraordinary discipline, partly through luck, but mostly because of where he worked. In the late 1980s and through the 1990s, Hanssen worked in some of the most sensitive positions inside the FBI. He served in the National Security Division, the FBI's Soviet Analytical Unit, and eventually in a role that gave him oversight of the FBI's own internal spy hunting operation. He was at various points essentially in charge of looking for people exactly like himself. He used that access ruthlessly. When the FBI began developing a database to track Soviet intelligence operations, Hanssen was involved in building it. He knew what information had been flagged, what investigations were active, which leads were being pursued. Whenever he sensed the FBI getting close to discovering a mole, he could review what they had and determine whether they were getting close to him. His colleagues found him strange but brilliant. He was abrasive, arrogant, sometimes openly contemptuous of his supervisors. He once installed monitoring software on his supervisor's computer to demonstrate a security vulnerability. When managers asked him to stop, he explained calmly that he was proving a point about their inadequate security. The religious dimension of his life added a strange layer of cognitive dissonance. He led prayer groups. He brought colleagues to daily mass. He mentored young agents on the importance of faith and integrity. He once arranged a stripper for a friend, then confessed it as a sin and helped pay for the friend to attend a Catholic retreat. Let the absurdity and tragedy of that land without comment. There is a word that psychologists use for the capacity to hold 2 completely contradictory realities in your mind at once without one disturbing the other. Compartmentalization. Robert Hanssen was its master. Part 5. The Unraveling. By the late 1990s, American intelligence knew, with certainty, that there was a mole. Too many sources had gone dark. Too many operations had been blown. The question was where the mole was. For years, suspicion centered on the CIA. The agency launched an internal investigation. Several innocent officers had their careers destroyed. One analyst, Brian Kelly, was placed under intense surveillance for years. His phones tapped, his garbage searched, his family watched. He was not the mole. He was just a convenient suspect in the wrong agency. The FBI and CIA began offering enormous amounts of money to Russian intelligence sources who might help identify the mole from the Russian side. In 2000, they found one. A retired SVR officer, Russia's successor to the KGB, offered to sell them a file. The price? $7 million. The file contained a plastic bag the mole had used in a dead drop. It contained fingerprints. And inside the bag, investigators found a single strand of tape, the kind used on old-fashioned thumbtacks found in Virginia state parks. The fingerprints matched Robert Hanssen. The FBI moved carefully. They couldn't just arrest him. They needed evidence, and they needed to make sure he didn't destroy anything or flee. They transferred him to a new position in FBI headquarters, one with no access to classified material, under the pretense of a promotion. They told him he would be supervising a private security contractor. Hanssen accepted. He was pleased, apparently, to receive what he thought was recognition. On February 18, 2001, he drove to Foxstone Park to make what he planned to be his final dead drop before retirement. Surveillance teams watched him park, walk to the bridge, kneel, and leave the package. As he stood up, they moved in. He did not run. He did not fight. He looked at the package under the bridge, then at the agents surrounding him, and reportedly said, "What took you so long?" Part 6. Aftermath and Reckoning. The full scope of the damage Hanssen had caused took years to calculate. The CIA and FBI together assessed that his betrayals had cost the United States somewhere between $7 billion and $10 billion in compromised intelligence programs. The human cost, the agents executed, the operations burned, is harder to put a number on. In a plea agreement designed to allow the government to extract a full debriefing from him, Hanssen pled guilty to 15 counts of espionage and conspiracy. He avoided the death penalty. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The debriefing itself was troubling. Hanssen was evasive, sometimes misleading, and clearly still playing games. He gave interrogators some information, enough to satisfy the terms of his deal, but intelligence analysts believe he withheld a great deal more. His wife, Bonnie, who had known about his first espionage act in 1979 and been told he had stopped, was devastated. She had spent decades as a devout Catholic mother of 6, attending daily mass beside a man who was one of history's most prolific traitors. The government ultimately gave her his pension, a small gesture toward acknowledging that she too was a victim. The CIA officer whose career had been ruined by false suspicion, Brian Kelly, eventually received a formal apology. It did not undo the years of surveillance, the broken career, the family trauma. The post-mortems inside the FBI were brutal. How had he survived so long? The answers were institutional. A culture that valued seniority over scrutiny, that did not require polygraph tests for its own senior agents, that allowed a single person to accumulate enormous power without meaningful oversight. Those systems were overhauled after Hanssen's arrest. Robert Hanssen died in federal prison in 2023 at the age of 79, still having never fully explained why he did it. The money, some $1.4 million in total, was never entirely recovered. Much of it was apparently spent on gifts for a Washington exotic dancer he had befriended and tried, in his peculiar way, to save. The bridge at Foxstone Park still stands. The creek still runs beneath it. Families still walk dogs on the path above. Every person who passes there walks over the place where America's greatest spy left his secrets in the dark, for 22 years, without anyone noticing. The most dangerous spy is not the one who defects. It is the one who stays, who smiles at the morning briefing, prays at noon, and betrays everything by afternoon. Robert Philip Hanssen, FBI special agent, Soviet asset, traitor, parishioner, father, a ghost who haunted the Bureau from the inside for longer than anyone wanted to admit.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe for more real spy stories.